Okay, good evening, everyone. Today we are hosting Dr. Lemonia Papadopoulou-Kelideou'yu. She is from Greece and she is a lecturer at the City College University of York, Europe campus. And she will be delivering a few minutes later a lecture on business negotiations, the art of developing strategic alliances. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Lemonia for accepting our invitation and delivering this very interesting lecture to us. Now, I want to give the word to Dr. Lemonia, and we will be listening to you.
Hello, thank you very much for the kind invitation. I would like to thank, first of all, Istanbul Ticaret University and you, Professor, for inviting me. It's a great honor for me to be here with you. The topic that I'm going to discuss about is business negotiations, and as the title says, the art of creating alliances. I will share my screen to, I have prepared a presentation for you. Just to confirm that you can all see my screen. Can you see my screen on my presentation?
Yes,
okay.
It's very well seen, no problem.
All right, thank you. So this is a topic that we are going to discuss about business negotiations and how we can create strategic alliances and what is the importance, what are the potential reasons that can lead us to non-successful alliances. Okay, right. Before presenting and before starting my presentation, I would like to introduce a little bit myself. So my name is Lemonia Papadopoulou-Kelideou'yu, as you said. I come from Greece. I live in Thessaloniki, which I know is a very popular place for Turkish people. It's the birthplace of Kemal Atatürk. I live here, I work here in Thessaloniki. So my specialization, my degree is in negotiations in tourism. I am an instructor in UNWTO with my new upcoming online course in the online academy under the title Negotiations in Tourism. I'm a lecturer in City College, and at the same time, I am consultant and trainer in business negotiations. I have a 15-year experience in negotiations, different types, both international relations and business negotiations. I'm here today to discuss and share my knowledge about business negotiations. My studies and my background is basically economics. This is where everything started in my life with a bachelor degree in economics. Then I followed the path of economics and finance, and then the field of negotiation was the one that attracted me a lot. So today we're going to discuss about business negotiations. Before discussing about building up strategic alliances, I think it is very useful to share some to shed some light on that science of negotiation. So it is not a new science. It is a science that comes from 1950. It stems from game theory, and it started as a distributive process of win-lose. We are all familiar with that. And then after the years and throughout the years, it turned into more integrative process, which is very well known as a win-win process. Now, today when we are discussing about negotiations, most of people still think that it is a competitive process. Theory and practice throughout the years says that it is not a competitive process. It is an integrative process, and it is a process where we build cooperations. So principled negotiation, which is what we are applying, is a type of negotiation which is based on 4 main principles. And these principles is that, first of all, we separate people from the problem, which means that when we are negotiating, we distinguish the human aspect, human behavior, human feelings, and the raised issue. We try to work away from stereotypes, from emotions, in other words. The second one is that we should focus on interest and not on positions. Positions is everything that we say, and interest is what we are really interested in. What is the decoding of body language, of of our oral expression. The third principle is about creating alternatives. And this is one skill which is very important when we are negotiating. And we will see later on why in building strategic alliances, creating alternatives is a very crucial skill. And it's probably a key factor that can lead to success, or let's say failure of a strategic alliance, or failure to complete, to address, to create a strategic alliance. And the fourth one is to insist the result to be based on some objective criteria. So it's really important to understand what negotiation is about, because strategic alliance includes a lot of negotiation, and strategic alliance is about communicating and creating cooperation between different stakeholders. And we will see that in reality, we don't have many success stories in strategic alliance, in a sense that although stakeholders want to or are willing to create a strategic alliance, it is not completed for a number of reasons. So one of the reasons that strategic alliances are not or cannot still be completed and addressed is the lack of negotiation skills, the lack of knowledge of what negotiation is about. And that's why discussions remain discussions and we do not come up with the expected result. So there are, let's say, three types again of negotiation styles. The hard one, which is more aligned and more, it reminds a lot the bargaining process, which is not a real negotiation, and I will explain why. Then we have soft negotiation style. Well, we concentrate, we over concentrate and exaggerate with discussions and with human aspects, emotions that we do not come to an efficient negotiation outcome. And then we have the principled negotiation, which is based on the four principles I've just illustrated. One common mistake is that we think about negotiation when we sit around the table, around the negotiation table. So discussing about strategic alliances in business leads to thinking common. I mean, most people think that, okay, we were going to sit around the table and discuss whether we can cooperate. Negotiation process and strategic alliance process starts a lot before sitting around a table. It has to do with research about our own interests, about rivals or disputants' interests, about detecting, researching about areas of common interest, where we can create proposals, where we can create alternatives, and about fields that can be enlarged if negotiation process is applied properly and efficiently. We discuss about sharing the pie. So there's a lot of discussion about sharing the market pie. In negotiation, what we say that it's not about sharing the pie. It's about enlarging first the pie and then looking for mutually beneficial results regarding sharing the pie. It doesn't mean that we are looking for equal pieces of sharing regarding sharing the pie. There are inequalities there, but the first target is to enlarge the pie. Once we enlarge the pie and we agree on that, then sharing the pie is a different story. But the difficulty is met already in enlarging the pie. Now, in business worlds, in market, we will see that there is power imbalance. Not all players in the market have the same power, the same negotiation power, the same market power. And power is any mean that can be used by any enterprise to achieve goals. Now, the question is how different players, how different stakeholders, different size of business can come to a strategic alliance and can agree on an outcome, on a cooperation, because there are different interests, different power. So there is also that as I will also discuss about later, the principal agent problem, and I will explain why. So negotiation is actually the art of creating alternatives for the organization or enterprise we are representing, but also it is the art of creating, inventing alternatives for disputants, for rivals that are mutually beneficial, not equally beneficial, but at least mutually beneficial. Because if rivals do not see any interest, do not see any benefit, then there is no reason in continuing the negotiation process and in working in order to come to an agreement. Creating alternatives has an abbreviation in negotiation field. It's called BATNA, which is the abbreviation for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. And there is a reservation, there's the value, the bottom, let's say, line, that each rival, each player, each disputant should be aware, because below that level, he or she should not accept any proposal, any agreement. So a successful negotiation outcome and a successful discussion for creating a strategic alliance means that every rival, every disputant should be aware of that value. Otherwise, there is also the, let's say, danger of accepting an agreement or accepting an offer that is not beneficial for a rival. Now, this means that there has to be addressed a really an analysis in depth. It will need time to be invested because it has to do with market research. So negotiation, in other words, is based on three key words: plan, prepare, and perform. So we should definitely zoom out. In order to discuss about strategic alliances, we need to be aware of the internal environment of an enterprise and the external as well, the conditions in the market, competition conditions in the market, to be able to understand, to analyze the positioning of an enterprise in the market, not only the one that we are representing, but also to understand and to locate successfully other rivals in the market, because otherwise I will not be aware of the competitive advantage of my organization or my business, and I will not be able to recognize competitive advantages of other rivals around the table. Therefore, there is no space to discuss and to start any discussion about strategic alliances. Now, I love this iceberg that I have created, and it shows actually the negotiation power and the different factors that can affect the negotiation power of players. So when we discuss about negotiations, we know that there are, as I said, there is power inequality, and there is always, because of that power inequality, some difficulty to discuss, to communicate effectively and efficiently in order to come to an agreement. Being aware of the factors that affect the negotiation power of a player is very important. Why? Because we can work at the same time in activating those factors. So when we are negotiating, we work simultaneously at different levels. One is negotiating, but at the same time, we never stop the process of boosting and strengthening the negotiation power that we have. So reputation, for example, is something very, very crucial. There are many examples coming from different sectors in the market where reputation was very important for players to achieve certain agreements, and then we realized, or after some period of time, these players announced that they experienced a bankrupt. So reputation is very important, and we should always look at this factor, work that factor, and boost that factor. Now, marketing, HR, technology, and of course, the brand of an enterprise. Now, another factor that it is very important in communications, in making business, is culture. Culture plays a key role in negotiations, especially when we are discussing about strategic alliances of enterprises that come from different cultural backgrounds. And here I want to say that there are three types of culture. One is the personal culture, the market culture, and the corporate culture. Usually, we are all humans. We definitely represent and we adjust ourselves to corporate culture, but the corporate culture is always blended with some personal culture and some market culture, which is the culture of the area where we come from, we live in, and it definitely affects us. When we are dealing with international business, we should be aware of cultural customs, cultural habits, and we should always take them into account. Why? Because there may be misunderstandings, there may be mistakes that we say in negotiation that can disrupt the nice and probably smooth process of negotiating. Now, strategic alliances. Let's start with definition. What is a strategic alliance? Strategic alliance is a business strategy, is one strategy of tackling competition. So we may have strategic alliances, another option is mergers and acquisitions, and the other one is organic development. The last two are supposed to be more aggressive strategies in tackling and handling competition. So today we're going to discuss about strategic alliances, which is supposed to be a more, let's say, cooperative strategies. I said not that much aggressive as the other two are. One very famous example of a strategic alliance is the IATA, which comes from the aviation world, and where we can see different business collaborating, and the good aspect of adopting a strategic alliance strategy is that enterprises keep their autonomy. So they work independently and they cooperate on certain aspects that they have agreed before. Although we have that successful example of that strategic alliance, we will see that in other sectors of the economy, strategic alliances are not many. And I will give you today one example that comes from the tourism industry, and more specifically from the hospitality sector. In other words, cooperations and collaborations between hotels and other sectors of the economy or industries. And I will present that there is a problem there, and I will explain why this can be the case, because tourism is a very crucial factor for many countries like Greece, like Turkey, like Spain, like Italy, like the Mediterranean, let's say, countries. So two types of strategic alliances. They can be equity alliances or non-equity alliances. Now, what can be the incentives of creating a strategic alliance compared to other business strategies, as I said, like mergers and acquisitions? They can share resources, players can share resources, physical, financial, technological, human resources, etc. They handle risk, which is very, very important. It's one of the reasons that they create a strategic alliance. They share information. Definitely, they increase negotiation power on certain aspects and certain areas of interest. And they exchange knowledge, like IATA has many educational programs for members where they can share knowledge and they can exchange best practices. Now, I will present one example coming from the tourism industry. So tourism industry is a very complicated industry. I think it is a representative example of why, because it includes, as you see the graph here, it includes many industries like food production, you can see here. You can see transportation, which includes aviation and other types of transportation, hotels, restaurants, different industries. But there is what is called the silo effect, meaning that although these sectors should create strategic alliances of different sizes, of different types, although it is a prerequisite for all sectors to cooperate in order to achieve a good, let's say, tourism product for customers, for tourists, they do not. So we have, for example, food producers who are focused on food production, which is what they're supposed to do, correct? Yes, but there is no, let's say, tourism way of thinking, tourism approach in that food production. There are some cases worldwide of partnership and strategic alliances of food production sector with the tourism sector, hotel sector, but it is not up to the level that would be expected or would be ideal. So this industry, this sector of the economy is very complicated and there are no strategic alliances. Now, there are certain reasons that a strategic alliance may be difficult to be achieved. As I said, it's power inequality. Another reason is that principal agent problem, which means that there are some people who represent business, authorities, organizations, and instead of working for the interest of the business, or instead of working for the interest, the common good of the strategic alliance, they're more focused on, let's say, more personal interest, they lose their path for some way, and it doesn't work. Another reason is that people who represent businesses, organizations, again, institutions, lack of negotiation skills and negotiation knowledge. Although negotiations is something that we practically experience, we practically apply every day in everything that we do, when we discuss about strategic alliances and successful strategic alliances, there should be certain knowledge of that technical field, which is called negotiations. In other words, sometimes representatives do not spend the time that they should spend in order to investigate the areas of common interest between rivals, so they don't spend time, and they cannot detect them. So they need to do some, as I said, market research, a proper, let's say, SWOT analysis. It sounds theoretical, but it is not. Practically, it's very useful and it should be addressed, but the truth is that they do not. Another reason for strategic alliances to be difficult to be accomplished is, as I said, because there is a lack of certain negotiation skills. For example, there is the misperception that a good negotiator is one who is not flexible. On the contrary, the opposite is what is true. A good negotiator should be flexible, should address active listening, and active listening is not just listening, the pathetic listening. It's about understanding, decoding words, decoding body language, being aware of my opponent's or rival's interest, and try to find areas of common interest, and there, in these areas, being able to create alternative solutions for myself and for the other potential or future partners. So this lack of skills and this lack of technical knowledge can be an obstacle for strategic alliances to be addressed. As I said, another issue, another problem in strategic alliances is the principal agent problem, where the agents works in a different way than the principal would like to. Okay, so coming back to the example, I have created here a short, let's say, short graph to show you the different players and what a strategic alliance could be created among, potential players. But if you think of the different types of interest of all these players, then it's evident why strategic alliance is not an easy case and what can be the conflict of interest that can prevent an effective communication among these players. And that's why negotiation skills and negotiation knowledge is very, very important in overcoming these obstacles, or at least in leading and affecting the conversation between players. So we think, for example, that the negotiation game is between certain players. In the tourism industry or in hospitality, we would say that it is among hotels and tour operators. Nevertheless, if we zoom out in this example, in this industry, we will see that that's the last stage of negotiations. Sometimes negotiations start a lot before that stage, meaning that countries, governments, airlines, tour operators, local governments, different players come to certain agreements, and then negotiations at a local or individual level between hotels and tour operators come after those agreements. The same with other industries. In commerce, there are intergovernmental agreements or agreements between chambers, and then there are negotiations between, for example, wholesalers, retailers, agents, whatever. So thinking about negotiations, business negotiations, and strategic alliances needs to recognize, first of all, the key players, the players, and the stages, the different stages of negotiation. There is not just one single conversation or one single negotiation process. It's, we would say that it is a multi-negotiation process among different players, and being aware of what is our stage is very important, because sometimes players misperceive the stage of negotiation. They think that they have more power to affect the outcome, but sometimes they cannot for certain reasons, because other institutions, other organizations, or probably, as I said, governments come first to certain agreements, and then all the rest follows. Okay, I would also like to mention in this framework the role of diplomacy. So when we discuss about business negotiations and strategic alliances, still we all as academics or those who are businessmen think sometimes at a narrow level, meaning that we think that it's only business to business. As I said, negotiation is something more complicated. So there are the diplomats who are really important for countries that they represent. Why? Because they have a key role in business. They have key role in facilitating and probably I would say facilitating the creation of strategic alliance. Why? Because they introduce their countries, they facilitate communication between stakeholders, they bring different stakeholders in communication. Otherwise, that probably would be more difficult to do. They recognize opportunities in a certain country or in a certain region. Sometimes they participate in that negotiation and in the collaboration between, as I said, different stakeholders like chambers, universities, business, etc. So when we discuss about business negotiations and strategic alliances, about it at different at the two main levels in economics, the macroeconomic and the microeconomic level. So it's a more it's a teamwork. It's a complicated teamwork, and not one man show, as I like to say, professor. So that was a short presentation that I wanted to do, and I would like to add some to make some more comments on that. I come from academia, but I have many years experience in the industry. So for those of you who are today with us, I would like to send a message, and that message is academic research is something very, very important and something very crucial, because this is the way of moving forward, and we all know this, and we recognize the efforts that are addressed worldwide. But we should keep in mind that sometimes when you go to the industry, and this is a personal experience, and you say, for example, that I've done research, etc., etc., there is they ask you, okay, very good research, but can I apply tomorrow? Can I make money out of that? Is this practical for me? So it's not only about being technically correct when undertaking an academic research, it's also about understanding market needs, especially in business. Profit is the keyword for them, sales, revenue. So being able to think in a not necessarily academic way at the same time, and to think practically, would bridge the gap between market and academia. And I think that we are all interested in bridging that gap. So that was all I wanted to say. And another thing is that there are examples, there are the international organizations which play a key role in these in strategic alliances, like Food Agriculture Organization, like UNWTO. They encourage strategic alliances. There is a framework for different businesses, not only countries, not only at a country level, but also at regional or business level to participate, and they can facilitate these type of, as I said, strategic alliances. So that was for me, from my end. I don't know if there are any questions coming from you, Professor, or from the audience, or something that you would like me to address in more detail, probably.
Thank you, Dr. Lemonia. It was a great presentation, very informative and very useful. And at this hour of today, it was a great pleasure to listen to you. And also, I appreciate your efforts and sparing your time. First of all, I want to ask my students, maybe they have questions to ask. My dear students, do you have any questions to ask Dr. Lemonia? I am seeing Sena is here, Melissa is here, Hadel is here.
I think everything was perfect. It was a great presentation. I don't have any question, but my comment is that it's a very good presentation. Thank you very much.
I would like to ask you, can you think of an example of a strategic alliance? I would like to ask the students, then let's have a discussion, because it's mainly about students. Can you think of a strategic alliance that could take place in your country at a different level that does not exist and would be helpful or important to be created in any industry?
Yes, this question goes to you, Melissa. Did you catch the question? Do you need any extra explanation, Melissa?
The question was a bit confusing, and the sound is sometimes cutting, so I didn't understand very well what was.
Okay, if I could ask you, Melissa, can you please create one strategic alliance in your region? You choose the industry: tourism industry, food production industry, cars industry, whatever. What would that strategic alliance be?
Just try to, you are in a business world, Melissa, your family is doing some business, I know that. So just think of their alliances or relationships with other companies And in that respect, try to give some examples, maybe. At least in your industry, for example, in the industry where your family business is operated.
Yes, in car industry, you mean, right?
Yeah. All right. I think you are having, maybe she is a little bit
Give it
excited.
some time. Yes, let's give
yes.
some time to think about it.
Yes, maybe. But yes, I can answer your question actually. Of course, just like in our countries also, there are lots of examples of strategic alliances, because this is a fact of doing business without partnering or without combining forces or some advantageous aspects of the companies. Actually, it might not be so sensible to do business. Companies are operating in a very competitive and very fragile and also unstable environment, especially in these times. There are lots of factors which are impacting companies negatively, and they are not able to predict their future. And that's why they are having very important troubles in making or building their strategies. For this reason, the more they combine their let's say, strengths or advantages, the more they will be sensibly reliable to or resistant to external forces or disruptive effects, let's say. Okay. So in every industry, we can find lots of examples of strategic alliances. But if you ask me specifically, I can say that joint ventures are very popular in these days. I mean, as far as I realize that, companies are preferring to use that strategy. They are combining their forces and create new company. And, this is called joint venture. And especially in automotive industry and in textile industry, in agriculture, in defense industry also, we are seeing examples of these. Also, these alliances not only happening in the national level, it's also happening at international levels. When you check, when you examine some industries specifically, because companies are aware of the fact that they cannot prohibit it or confine within the limitations of their internal, let's say, marketplace. Because the world is a marketplace right now. We are living in an information digital age. So right now, for example, just 30 years ago, could we imagine such a thing? Currently, you are delivering a lecture from Saloniki, and we are listening to you in Istanbul. Just go 30 years earlier, in 1999, in 1990s. Even in the beginning of the 21st century, there was no such an infrastructure to deliver or use such opportunities. So everything is changing, and in line with these changes or in line with the external forces, companies are trying to find ways of combining their strengths and establishing strategic alliances. If I were a business person, I would do the same thing. Okay. I also very agree with you in terms of the practical implications of what we academicians are doing. There are two groups of academicians actually. One group is living in the world of theory, and other group is living in the world of practice. But there must be a bridge between them. What we are thinking must have reflections in the practice. Otherwise, what we are doing is or will be senseless. This is what I think. I completely agree with you in that respect. All right. It was a kind of comment, actually. But thank you.
Thank you very much. I also agree with you. It is a dynamic process, as you described it very well. Strategic alliance, it's a dynamic process of coming to an agreement. Conditions are changing every day, so we should not neglect this when discussing about strategic alliances. Okay. Other questions probably coming from the audience?
My dear students, do you have any questions? Sena, Adel, do you want to ask anything or comment maybe? I think this is the first time.
It's also good to agree on that aspect of research, the practical aspect of research, because industry is looking desperately for solutions coming from universities, coming from the academia. because especially small, medium enterprises are suffering for a number of reasons, and they are desperate in collaborating or having that knowledge that will move them forward. But the drawback is that academic research sometimes is very, very theoretical, too theoretical for the industry. Let's rephrase it, too theoretical for the industry, for the market.
When I was listening to you, actually a question came into my mind when especially you were talking about the culture. And this is something I also study in my research. And to me, actually, the role of culture is significantly changing because the world is being globalized, let's say. The role of cultural intelligence or the differences maybe between the populations or the nations is perishing actually, because there are, if I visit Greece, for example, one day, most likely I will see lots of things familiar with where I live, okay? Or if I go another country again, I will see lots of things similar to the things where I can find in where I live. So this is because of the globalization, and also these effects are very, let's say, observable in the business domain as well. That's why maybe more research can be directed to figure out or maybe redefine the role of cultural differences and how it impacts the negotiation process, for example.
I would say that especially between Greeks and Turkish, there's not much different in cultures. These cultures are so blended that it's like one culture. So that type of communication, the code of communication. But if you think about completely different and distant cultures like Japanese culture and Brazilian culture, like Japanese people do not speak. They have silence gaps when they communicate, whereas, for example, Brazilian people are supposed to, to speak fast, loudly, etc. So if we have a negotiation, let's say, between somebody from Brazil and from Japan, one common mistake is to misinterpret the silence of the Japanese, or to misinterpret the fast pace of speaking, or speaking loudly of the Brazilian disputant. So in this sense, cultures that are not very close together can be an obstacle in negotiations if you do not become aware of the culture, if you're not aware of the customs, of the way of communicating. As I said, the habits. It is all about communication at the end of the day. So if you cannot interpret my silence or my body language, then you will not read my interest, you will not decode me efficiently, and therefore you may come up with not correct conclusions, not correct arguments. We will have problem in communication. Therefore, how can we come to an agreement? How can we cooperate if we do not take into account the cultural differences of each other? But this is not the case with countries that are very close, as you said, like Greece and Turkey.
Yes, thank you for your explanations. Another thing that I wonder is the role of the power balance. For example, when two parties come together and they negotiate something, most likely in some cases, there will be a power imbalance between these two sides, right? Maybe this power imbalance will be because of the dependency relationships. In the business world, the more you are dependent, the less power you will have naturally. So in such cases, can there be any strategies to balance this unequal situation?
Okay, yes, things are difficult. That's the truth when there is that power imbalance. And one of the reasons of having the power imbalance is the level of dependency. So the more dependent I am to you, the less powerful I am, and the easier for you to negotiate and to impose your terms to me. What we say, one tactic, is called, well, it comes again from the Brazilian art of war, and it's called jiu-jitsu. I don't know if you're aware of that art of war, but it's one. It says that you should step aside when you are when you receive an attack. Let's say you step aside because you are the less powerful, and what you do in negotiation, you try to focus on areas of common interest. Of course, when there is power imbalance, practically, we are going to accept some terms that we wouldn't otherwise. But what we say is that in this case, we work simultaneously at different levels, meaning that in order to decrease the level of dependency, you should reinforce your product, your brand, because in many cases it has been detected that one of the main problems is that they don't have a strong brand. They don't have a strong product. They don't have a good service, in other words. So this is number one. Number two is you work simultaneously on marketing. If you think of the iceberg that I showed you, and it shows the factors that affect the negotiation power, it's all about this. So communicating your product and reinforcing your product, your brand, will build up your reputation. If you build up your reputation, you will increase demand in what you do. If you increase demand, you are less dependent on other players in the market to develop your business, to sell your products, and to enlarge, let's say, your share in the market. So when negotiating, it's not about whether you're going to accept or not some terms. Sometimes we do that because we are less powerful and we cannot do differently. But negotiation is a dynamic process. It's not just one process and that's it. We constantly negotiate. So probably one negotiation result is not that effective, but you can always negotiate silently the results of the next negotiation, probably with the same player, the same supplier. Let's say it's the supplier in your business. So working on your product, working on your reputation will decrease the level of your dependency and will turn you into a more powerful player. Also, you can create strategic alliances. So if you are not that powerful, what you should do is to get out in the market, try to find partners, try to find people to create an alliance, if not a strategic alliance, and then you can increase your power. You can share resources, not only your resources and your capabilities, create a network around you that will boost your power and will increase your power and again decrease the level of the dependency that you said before. So there are many options and not aggressive options, because negotiation is not about aggressiveness. Aggressiveness, competitiveness in this way, and distributive bargaining does not lead to efficient outcomes, efficient negotiation outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much for these very good, very detailed explanations. Let me ask again to my students and other participants, do you have any questions to ask Dr. Lemonia? All right, I think we have no new questions. I thank you again. It was a really very interesting lecture and a really very enjoyable discussion. It was a pleasure for us to host you here. I hope in the coming times we will be hosting you again. So we can, I think, end this session in that way. If you have something to say.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation. Thank you for all of you who are here today with me to discuss about strategic alliances and business negotiation. It was a good opportunity for me and a great honor to have that presentation. And I would I would like to visit Istanbul one day. I
Yes.
should. That's the sentence that I would like to join this session. And you're all invited to Thessaloniki.
Of course, thank you for your very kind invitation, and we will be very happy to host you here. I mean, when you come to Istanbul, also, we will be very happy to host you in our campus when you visit Istanbul. I hope one day we will be able to meet face to face in Istanbul and Thessaloniki. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.